Hey, Danny. Welcome to the
Hey, what's up,
podcast.
Ron?
What's up?
Not much, man. Thanks for having me on your very first episode of the Red Belt Podcast. Excited to get you launched, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for being on here. So, I've known you for quite a while. We met in a previous mastermind. We're in a different mastermind. We've been to each other's schools, but some of the other people on here may not know you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your personal journey in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, absolutely. Started training in 2005 and then ended up opening my academy up in 2015 on an Alliance affiliate academy the whole time. And it's went through a couple transitions since then. Learned a lot of painful, expensive lessons along that way. And I imagine that's going to be part of the conversation today of, people kind of learning some of my mistakes so they don't do the same things that I did. Maybe it saves them some money, saves them some heartache, maybe saves them a marriage. Who knows? Because bad stuff can happen sometimes when you get a lot of stress in your life. So, yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. Been very educational, but I would say worth it in the end so far. And yeah, I just love to kind of talk a little bit about maybe how I can help other people enjoy this process of being a martial art owner a little better than maybe I have it in the beginning. Because again, it was a lot of work, Brian, as you know, a lot of work. And I think the more that we learn from other gym owners, the better the new ones are going to be as we pass that baton many years down the road.
Yeah, it was definitely a struggle when I opened as well, and that's I wish I had more insight from other gym owners when I opened because I feel like I had just like some ideas. Same way a new jiu-jitsu person, white belt, like I have some ideas. I'll grab his head and what like, but a lot of times those untested ideas may not be so great.
Yeah, and I know the feeling. That's on the mat and off the mat, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You have any of those such ideas you had at the beginning that you remember that didn't work out?
Man, I probably had a lot of them. I'm a man of many ideas, and the problem is that sometimes I stretch myself too thin, as I seem to be doing even in current times, just because you see so many problems and so many things that need to be fixed, and then so many ways to fix it that you wish there was just an easy solution or you had 1,000 limbs to make it all happen. And so you try anyways. And of course, through that process, many are going to fail, some are going to show promise, and some may work very well for a time being. And hopefully some work forever, but that's just probably not going to be the case, as you and I know in this process. So, yeah, let's get to it, man. Let's start diving deep about what this business is like. Because I don't know about you, but I was one of them. I started my gym when I wasn't a black belt. I think I got my brown belt on my grand opening day from Professor Raul Minez. And so, in my opinion, I had no business owning a gym. That's why I hired a black belt to run it. Just because, what do I know? I'm not a black belt level to be teaching. At least I didn't feel that way. And that's why I brought in talent in the beginning in that process. And I see that a lot. I see blue belts open gyms. I've seen white belt open gyms. And we know one who's very, very successful now, but there's still something for you and I that's spent many, many years and all the trials and tribulations going. When we see a guy that's been in the yard for maybe 1 or 2 years, and now they want to be a mentor, it's kind of cringy to me a little bit.
Yeah.
One, I know people won't agree with this, but I just feel like you're disrespecting the art if you're trying to do that and be that leader when you just haven't been through that gauntlet of pain yet. But doesn't mean you're not going to be successful. I just feel you're not doing the art. It's due diligence.
So you
Taking
feel
that.
like that's a white belt, or do you what belt do you feel like you're not disrespecting the art? Because both of us opened before black belt.
Yeah, and I really did feel like I disrespected the art. That's why I brought in someone who bridged that gap for me. Because I've always had that feeling that you feel like you need to reach at least that black belt level to be that person on the mat, or at least have the time equivalent to a black belt because there's obviously things that can happen where maybe you train 15 years, you're still a brown belt because your academy's closed down, which happens all the damn time. Even happened with me several times. Your instructor leaves and you join a new gym, you kind of lose that time a little bit. So maybe it's not just about black belt. Maybe it's more about years or experience in that art or many arts that kind of gives you that leadership role.
How many years do you think?
I would say at least 8, in my opinion. I would say at least 8. Yeah, but I have seen people do it in less time, and they're successful in their own right, But in my opinion, and I have seen it both ways when it comes to this art. I've seen the younger belts be successful if they focus on competition. And what I mean by successful, they're running the show. They're doing everything. They're running the full business. They have no staff. They teach. And they're going to make money. They're going to make a living do that. And they'll probably get some good accolades in that early on. And maybe they grow and be awesome. And then the other side, I would say, is that you're focused more on self-defense. So say the Gracie Academy style. I would say there's a lot of success in there because of the simplicity of that training environment in there. So you have the very hardcore, which is your competition training, which in my opinion, I think it's very hard to sustain that long term. I do feel like competition can hurt your gym, but it can also help it. On there, it just kind of depends on what your avatar is or your dedicated client base. But for sure, the ones that focus more on self-defense, Creative Academy, I feel like they have less struggles than those other gyms. And I think that's just the nature of our society. They don't want to have a hard training environment. They want something that's not necessarily going to increase the anxiety of their day-to-day on there. And I think that's why I see some of the Gracie Academy gyms thrive very easy and have good retention and have a good process, mainly because the climate of the society in many ways, So that's kind of how I see, like, if you're a younger belt, you'll have success in those two. But one, I think, thrives more than the other. I would say that's more the self-defense style.
So with that self-defense style, are you saying gyms with like no rolling at all, or?
Yep. Or light rolling at best. Yeah, and you even saw a switch, like even Alliance made a switch in 2018 where they cut off full grappling for beginners. And they did this because they saw the effect of it in the business, but also on the mats. Certainly you're going to have your anomalies where you have your college wrestler come in and he can just do very, very well, very easy. But you take your out-of-shape person and you throw them in a very competitive environment, the likelihood of them staying is going to be very low, right? And so you almost have to handhold them a little bit because they're going through more troubles mentally than just learning jiu-jitsu. They're going through troubles of their own self-confidence because of maybe their weight issues or their health issues. And they haven't overcame that. So we're attacking another level of anxiety to them by putting them in, say, a sink or swim environment. And some will last, but most will not,
Yeah.
It's something I'm going a little bit tangent, so you're going to have to
No, I think that's good. That's a good topic. It's really controversial in BJJ now. But so there's different extremes of this, right? There's some I've heard of people that and I definitely don't go this route, but people are talking about I believe the Gracie Academy, you don't roll until blue belt. Am I wrong?
I think you're right on most of them. Yeah. I'm sure it's probably the recommendation. Do they all follow that? I don't know. But ours is 2-stripe white belt before you're really allowed to go to your intermediate class, which is full grappling in Alliance. And that's not just Alliance. It's even like, say, Lucas Apri follows a very similar ordeal in there. So some of your head, like your Cabrinas and stuff like that, even they are starting to follow that same model.
So about how many classes, how much time is that?
I can only speak on the Alliance process. It's 60 classes before you get your 2-stripe, and that's when you're going to be invited into the next level of classes. So that would, easiest thing is 60 classes, obviously, but what is 60 classes on? It could be 6 months, could be a year, could be a year and a half. It just depends on their commitment on that.
So that's a long time. Yeah, that's all right. For a lot of people, yeah, that would be 6 months to a year. So
Yep.
that's a really long time. So the question that I have, because I'm sure you've seen this and you track your numbers really well, is that helping Of course, I can see how that's helping a certain demographic to extend their average life in that 6 months or a year. At that changeover piece, is the conversion now better, or have we just pushed the conversion in the future?
For which part?
So basically, if say you take another academy that had a 4 week or a 6 week beginner course, and it's six
Yeah.
weeks, and when they throw people in after the 6 week mark, they're losing about say 50%, 40% of people, whatever that number is.
Yeah.
If you're saying if you move that mark up to 6 months or 8 months or 9 months to the 60 classes, are you simply doing that same 50% loss later, or are you losing less people? Are you keeping more people in jiu-jitsu, or are you just stalling it?
I would say it's a combination of all. You're going to have the ones that last and become longstanding members that you might have potentially lost to an injury early on and never saw them again. So one thing I have noticed, you do reduce injury by reducing grappling at the very early stages. One of the most common injuries that I had in the beginning was ribs. They didn't know how to break fall correctly. People were a little more aggressive, and ribs would just start getting bruised, broken, and also your demographics that you're going to bring in can cause it. I noticed it was mainly bigger guys, 190 plus, had a lot of rib injuries, and that's because there's a lot of weight coming on that ground on there. So I would say you're definitely reducing injury rate, which can, that can be a make or break difference on the future of that student right there alone, right? And are you prolonging that student to quit by adding that? I think absolutely, absolutely. Let's take females. Let's say you have a gym that you're targeting. You want to get a good female presence in your gym, which usually is a very good sign of a great culture. If you have a lot of females, that means people are protecting your environment. You have classes catered to maybe a little bit of a different type of student potentially. And let's say I throw a female in a class, and obviously they're the minority, very small minority of that classroom, and you got one female. Sometimes I've seen the gauntlet of some don't even like to sweat, some don't want a man touching them, some don't want any type of pressure on them on there, but they want to learn self-defense. And if my first class has them grapple, do you think they're going to stay? Probably not, right? But if I have a class that was more like a traditional martial art where you're learning how to block, you take your clinch, you get your takedown, you go through your transitions, and then you start creating what Gracie Academy calls female empowerment. That makes sense why they're focused on that, why they're marketing that. It's because their curriculum is doing exactly that. It's taking away that anxiety, taking away some of those trauma that some of these women experience, or why they're in there in the first place, and not just immediately throwing them into another trauma-based situation. Like you're working your way in there, and therefore now you can start growing the female presence, not only your academy, but in the community. And so if you just look at it from that as a standpoint, it's not just females. It's going to be every type of person is going to have some type of trauma in their life that maybe that activates, that you want to limit that and work your way into that process. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what you just said is something that I've just gotten a profound understanding of in the past couple of years. I understood it to an extent before that. But for those of you listening that don't get that basically what he was talking about, that the females is good test of the quality of the gym, is because they basically want the same thing as the average member, but they're just willing to quit faster a lot of the time over it. So what I've realized profoundly over the last couple of years is that the percentage of people coming in that want our help, that want us to serve them, that need jiu-jitsu in their life, that are absolutely terrified, is in the upper 90-something%. There's almost everyone, including the people that act tough, including the people that, some of them that may say, I want to fight, bro. There's a reason most of the people that say that on their first day, or that talk up on their first day, leave right away, is because they've set even further expectations for themselves. So almost everyone is absolutely terrified to come in. And that's one of the things that's pushed me over to, for several years, I've also had no beginners not rolling. I'm not as extreme as the 6 months. So it used to be, I've went on different, a week, 10 classes. Right now we're around 6 weeks minimum, and then a certain number of classes as you go through a technique curriculum. Um, but I was a little bit uncomfortable with that at first because it was very different than the way I came in. And
Yep.
are we making it McDojo-y? But I also see, like, I've seen people actually, their technique is better over the course of a year by not bringing them
100%.
right in. And yeah, because you're just basically wrestling with your buddies and don't know what you're doing and putting bad reps in at the beginning anyway. So
Yeah, interesting on that, Brian, because I started jiu-jitsu in the sink or swim, Brazilian jiu-jitsu in the sink or swim mentality, but I didn't start with Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I started with Japanese jiu-jitsu. And Japanese jiu-jitsu is all technique, all footwork, all drilling. There's a little bit of randori on there, but hardly any grappling. And I can tell you that transition from my Japanese to Brazilian was huge because my footwork is on point. My connections were on point. My education was on point. I knew terminology. I knew spacing. I knew all this because that was the focus for an hour every single class. It wasn't about winning. It was literally just about learning your body and drilling all that. And I think we need to bring that back into our schools because I know the effect it had on me, and I can see the effect that my students have now with the new process. Because, by the way, we still do positional grappling, which I do think is very, very beneficial. It's the full grappling from standing is where your problem is. And then one thing I'll do when I do positional grappling is, as an instructor, this is where your experience comes in. And why I'd say, a younger instructor probably won't understand these nuances. You look at your class size, say you have 20, 30 people, and you'll see how many new people, women, big people, older or younger. And, you almost need to have a control group on that. You either assign the partners or you split up the class by type of category. And when you do the positional grappling, it's only within their little network, and it takes a little bit to learn how that is if you're brand new in, teaching or that art.
yeah, I also do positional training in the beginner class. What positions do you do?
Well, we run a curriculum. I love the Alliance curriculum. It's about 24 lessons that goes in repetition of their what we call Mod 1 fundamentals. All right. Now, it's slightly different than their fundamentals, in my opinion, because I have looked at other curriculum courses. And the big difference between, say, Alliance and what I've seen in GB, GB is more positional based, Alliance is more sequence based. So they usually either start with a warm-up drill or self-defense into a position. That position will transition to another position into a submission. So you have an option as an instructor in Alliance. You can either run that sequence as a drill for the last 10 minutes, or you can take one position, maybe it's closed guard, side control, mat, whatever, and then you can just do positional grappling in that position that maybe was the primary focus of that sequence, but it wasn't the full sequence. So you have a choice as an instructor to change that up on the fly. So let's say that you teach that same class 4 times a week. You can change the ending of that class every single time. You can change details every single time. You can change a little connection path on there because it's really, as long as you're following the concepts of the fundamental process, then you can bring in your creativity, bring in your flavors, but still have a safe environment.
Do you have any submissions in those positional drilling?
Yeah, so well, it's basically rules. So we do first point scored or submission is what it is. So either you escape, sometimes it's just you escape or you regain your guard and then the position's over. But the thing is, even in the process of trying to regain my guard and I submit you, I still win. So we still allow that to play out.
Yeah, so I actually don't at my school right now. So in that, once again, I don't do it as long as you though. But we're just doing positional stuff. Basically, we teach submissions, but I took the applications of submissions away for the first 6 months right now. So you don't.
It's okay. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think you're doing exactly what we talked about earlier. You're protecting your students. You're building them from the ground up right. If you want to prolong the submissions, there's nothing wrong with that. If they're not really grappling for it, then it's going to work. It's not a bad thing we're doing. I think it's going to work well.
Yeah, I mean it's still live resistance training. So how long do you guys do in your beginner of the live resistance training? Is it a minute rounds, 2 minute, like? Is it not rounds? Is it like King of the Hill style? Like
we do a combination, and again, this is up to the instructor, but also read the class a little bit. The size of the class can kind of dictate how you're going to run it. So, for example, sometimes I do keen to heel, and it's you best of three. So you went 3 times, you're back in the line. Next person comes and takes your spot. Other times we'll do 2-minute drills, 3-minute drills, 1-minute drills. Sometimes I'll follow a system called the ecological system of teaching, where you can actually, instead of doing it at the end of class, in your drilling, let's say I teach, let's just go basics. I'm teaching a closed guard system for that day, right? And then you teach a arm bar from closed guard. Now, when I'm drilling it, I'll have them drill for a minute and a half, and then I'll do resistance training for a minute and a half. And then they switch. So you're actually doing the positional drilling, or positional training, grappling rather, within the drilling itself, instead of at the end of the class. So they can learn at the same time as the drilling what is going to work and what's not going to work. And that's just a different style of approach that I'll play with sometimes.
Yeah, so I like that idea. Do you feel like you've run into the concern that I have in the past, which is that if the heart rate goes way up, then the teaching after that you do may fall a little bit short because they're a little bit in fight or flight mode and can't pay attention anymore because you've raised the heart rate in the middle of class?
I like that thought, actually. There's probably some good data backing up exactly what you're saying. That let's say you lose really bad. You know how you have a good hard training, you go home, you're just like, what the hell happened, And now you're kind of bringing that 3 times in that class. So, man, you could be very, very right on that you are limiting the way that they're, getting that information and retaining it. Absolutely.
That's why I don't do that, because I've been in programs and stuff that did that. I think if you're a much more experienced practitioner, that's less of an issue.
Okay.
Personally, but I can tell you as a student, when I go into a class, I don't really like it. And I'm a black belt. I don't really like it because I don't like to be all sweaty and and rolling, even though I'm going to be way more chill than a white belt. I don't really like I would rather do the reps, get all warm doing that, be focused on that, and then move into live training. Personally, I think there's merit to it. I also understand the advantage of it just drilling what you just trained. I try to put it at the end of class though. There's a huge advantage of specifically drilling exactly what you were doing. Because if you're learning a Kimura from side control and you just do open rolling, then there's a really good chance you didn't reach side control today, especially as a white belt. And if you did, you got one. Instead, we put the whole time there. I think that's incredibly valuable, even for upper ranks, to be able to perfect stuff. So I like it. Yep. It's just where do we put it in the class? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say that the science behind it is tied to how we store memories in our brain. And memories are generally stored in reference to emotions. And so when they add the gaming style to the drilling, it enhances the emotions of the drilling. Therefore, it's supposed to lock in the memory better. And that's the theory or the science behind the ecological system of teaching on there. So that's why I don't do it every class. I like to change it in my class, but I do think it is important to have some type of differences as they walk in. That's one thing I think that got CrossFit really popular, was that you never knew what WOD you're walking into, what the workout is. You couldn't plan anything. Someone ran it for you. It was always a surprise. And not only did that create great results in your body, because your body likes to be tricked. It's constantly, trying to identify what's going on so it can get ready for it. And if you start having complacency anywhere in life, things crumble, right? Yeah. So if you follow the same concept every single time, eventually it's going to get stagnant. It's going to get complacent. And so, sometimes throwing an adult game in there is fun. Yeah. Changing the style of training is fun because now you're enhancing your tribe, your community within your team by having that different style of training sometimes, that surprise aspect of it. So, I think it's fun to kind of try out a lot of different things,
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of, if you can teach the same curriculum this week, but every day is a little bit different, that's what you're talking about, right? So you're basically on the same techniques, but you're doing it a different way. So the question I had for that is, so I know you have curriculum and things like that, but the curriculum has flexibility on those extra things you're adding. So now, okay, say you're out, which I believe you are right now. you're out of your gym. How do you set that flexibility as a system where you know your staff is still doing that how you want if you're out with injury or whatever?
Okay, so this is going to connect more than just teaching. This is going to connect to the business owner as a whole, because this philosophy has to be across the board in your gym. All right. So one thing I try to do is, one, to have the curriculum. So I just built an instructor group that has all my instructors. That I have like, I don't know, like 12 people or some crap. And I have an instructor group, and so now I have them every Monday. They're telling me what they're teaching, and I posted it in there. So I'm creating a community of conversations within that group, and I send them the curriculum that they teach, but I also tell them, hey, you don't teach it exactly. You can add your flavor, you can add your style, but the main thing is that make sure you're teaching at least something in half guard, because Alliance has belt tests, and I actually made them harder. And that belt test, all that information on there has to be taught. That's the main thing that I push, is that I put a standard within my instructors. Look, they have to know these positions, or they're not going to pass the test. All right, so you can teach whatever concept you want as long as it's within the test guidelines. Okay. And what that means is that I have to train them, stay on top of them, stay communicating, and stay in a leadership role in there. Now, what I mean by this, how this ties into other business, I have to do this on myself. I have to do this for myself. I need to have a mentor. I need to constantly train myself how to run my business right. I need to be pretty disciplined in that process. Same thing with sales. I need to do role playing. I need to read books on it. Front desk, same thing. I need to almost micromanage, make sure they're doing their job. And so if you kind of sit back and just let everything run, then chaos is going to happen, and you're going to start seeing things getting affected. And in the end, it's probably going to create a couple revolutions within your gym. If you know what revolution is, when instructors leave, steal your students, and then go off because your presence is no longer there. They like to do it better than you or whatever, right? So staying on top and staying disciplined and all that, and staying in a leadership role will hopefully reduce some of these problems, right? So that's how I go about it. And I wasn't always perfect, and I definitely got better last year with that, because I have so many classes in my gym. I'm a little different than other gyms. I have a 6 a.m., 8 a.m., 12 p.m., 4:30 p.m., 5:30, 6:30, 7:30. So they have 4 or 5 classes they can take in a day, and my instructors have shifts. They have morning shift, afternoon shift, evening shift, right? And so if I don't stay on top of that, then one shift probably gets a little squirty sometimes,
Yeah. So when you're having that many classes, you now have to have help, and you're not worried about the fact that you like the fact that these people are going to be different. They're going to be teaching a little bit different ways. So you're not concerned about exactly the same classes. You like that it's different.
Yeah, all I communicate as the highest priority: keep everything fundamentally and mechanically sound. That's all I ask. And there's a term I like to use. It's called the brown belt special. Go hire a brown belt to teach and watch what he teaches, because that more likely will not be fundamentally based. It's going to be whatever the hell he just saw on YouTube, something competition, something to try to build trust within his student base, because it's flashy, but it's not practical, right? So I call it the brown belt special. And so I try to limit that as much as possible, or give a class that just allows that to happen. So you have maybe a class on a Saturday, Sunday, hey, teach whatever you want, go have fun. You want to do the YouTube shit, you go ahead. But in day-to-days, your class, whatever you're teaching, is to be mechanically and fundamentally sound. And the reason I think that's incredibly important, one, it goes back to the roots of martial arts. 2, the likelihood of someone staying in your gym to black belt is incredibly small. So our duty, in my opinion, is to teach these people that are probably going to leave within a year, 2 years, the basic fundamental concept of martial arts. And so, like I tell my guys, I'm not here to teach you how to be a jiu-jitsu champion. I'm here to teach you how to be a martial artist. In my opinion, that's more important, because a martial artist, those characteristics that get instilled with you, you've got to write in its work. They carry over to the rest of your life. And that's why I think it's super important. And I think that's one of the downsides of the sports side. I think Dixon Gracie touches on that a little bit, is that when we focus too much on sport, we lose what this art was really built for. It was never really built for sport. Sport is just where the money came in play, right? That's where the business side kind of came in. And we've got to be very careful on that as being leaders in this industry,
Yeah, so we can go back to that, but I wanted to ask also, since you gave these instructors kind of a very vague guidelines, so what we both know when some people say mechanically and fundamentally based, people hear different things, right? And so if your guys, I guess it's a two-part question. One, are all your guys, your instructors, homegrown? And if you're not, how can you know they're hearing the same things you want them to hear in terms of when you say that, do they know it means what you want it to mean? And when they have this flexibility, right? If they're not homegrown, how can you know how they're going to use it?
Very, very good point, and I would say that is a problem in my gym more than likely because I think I only have one instructor. Technically, none are homegrown from white belt in my gym, and I wish that was the case because I do think that has a direct correlation to your community and your retention on there. And but the problem is that generally that takes 10 years to do that unless you're one of these gyms that try to speed promote just for your business sake, and people do that, and that's the wrong way of going about it. So I'm hired. Some have been under my system for 4 or 5 years. Some I've known since I started. They were just from different gyms, but we're just friends. And then you bring them in on there. But when you have some classes and the kind of way, since I'm not running every class, I have to hire out. And even though my gym has been around 8 years now, it's really not at that point where I'm going to have a true homegrown for probably another year or two on there. So to answer your question, very good point. How do you articulate what a mechanically and fundamentally sound process is? To me, it's I come back to bone structure, like how straight is your spine when you move? How stable is your base? How tight is your heel to glute ratio on there? How tight is your knee to elbow ratio? That to me is mechanically sound jiu-jitsu because everything you're doing is kind of based on those small number of principles, right? Your tripod connections, your three-point connections at all times, your spacing, where do you contact chest to chest on pressure? Where should your lens be extended or in? And I think you should teach with those principles in mind because not only is that important in the sport, but it's important in the street and it's important in teaching. So when I say that, that's what it means to me. And I think instructor does a really good job of that. John Donner. I think that's why New Wave is so good. Everything he does is just mechanically sound teaching philosophies. They just focus on the mechanical concepts, and then they can build new paths to that concept. And that's what it means to me. But how do you articulate it? Training courses. Hopefully having that instructor take one of your classes. Sometimes I have stepped over and just said, hey, I'm going to teach today. I want you to watch. And then I always have a couple lessons in my wheelhouse that I know I can hit that 100% and I can run that class. That's the benefit of a curriculum. Once you have a curriculum, and if you teach that class 15, 20 times, you're going to teach that class very, very well, hopefully, right? And so what I'll do is I have a handful that if I need to give a presentation or if I need to teach, I'll run that lesson plan on them. And that way they can see the flow, the style, even some of the terminology I'm going to use, and then what I'm emphasizing in that teaching to kind of help out.
So, so for people that know me maybe and are watching this and are thinking, how opinion-based is that statement? I guess it's opinion-based, but as a 10th Planet black belt, I went white to black belt under Eddie Bravo, right? And I've been following Eddie for all the time, and I still, maybe we can dispute a couple of words that could be missing or changed, but I 99% agree with what you said on what's fundamentally based. And I feel like if you're playing the rubber guard, that's still true. If you're playing these like you could be play a fancy 10th Planet guard, yep. And it's still true. So I still agree that that's the most important things, and I try to teach in a way that it's not so much I'm teaching the technique, it is the technique I'm teaching you the principles. I try to think about that. For sure. So we're on the same page there, even though we come from a very, very different lineage, and people accuse 10th Planet of being the opposite of that. But really, if you have that, you can put whatever sprinkles you want on top of it. So you taught at my gym. It's the only class I've taken, because I was at your gym. It was just an open mat. Only class I've taken from you was wrist locky. So would you say that's not something that complies because you showed mainly because it's a similar style. Are you saying that doesn't
Yeah.
really comply to this rule? That's different, or would you say it still complies?
It still complies, it'll just be on a micro level. So I'm teaching wrist locks, I'm going to teach the mechanics of the hand, how the flexibility, how the rotations work, what is the connecting joints that you need to control to make that submission a high rate submission. And that's how I teach. I mean, hopefully you got that from my seminar, that everything was just very structural and mechanically taught in a way that people understand, and now they can be creative once they understand how the joints work.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask that because I thought that was going to be your answer, but many people would be like, because it's wrist lock, they're not fundamental, right? Because so people's opinions of fundamentals, like, oh, the fundamentals are an armbar, a triangle, and like, the fundamentals, I agree, like, are the mechanics, right? So
Yeah,
a heel hook could still be fundamentals. A wrist lock could still be fundamentals. That's what I
absolutely.
think.
Yeah.
Because
Like,
as long
how
as
would you
you're,
fundamentally talk about a heel hook? It would be control the knee
yeah,
to attack the heel. Like that's a mechanically best way to approach it, right?
yeah.
Yep.
Um, some people say it doesn't comply to the position principle. Same thing with wrist locks. The position before submission thing, and right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, I'm with you, and that's everyone has their own philosophy of how things should work, and a lot of it's ego based. Let's just be honest. I mean, even the ability of not having heel hooks is ego based. It's not necessarily safety based, as one may assume. Because now, as we start learning heel hooks, you realize it's not necessarily more dangerous. It's just, I mean, I can snap into an armbar just as fast as I can snap into a heel hook and break it.
especially if you discuss Americanas, I think you could strongly argue an armbar is safer than a heel hook, but it's harder to argue that about Kimuras and Americanas, especially since I've seen way more injuries from Americana than a heel hook personally. Um,
And nastier injuries. I would say like omoplatas and Kimuras. Those injuries are almost 9 times out of 10 shoulder dislocate,
the
right?
shoulder dislocate. Um, my my
Popping out. Like
my
you see
my
it go.
my first month of jujitsu, it was at a karate MMA gym taught by white belts, right? But the head instructor broke my humerus bone in an Americana my
Right,
first month of jujitsu, and I was
right.
small, 114-pound white
Whereas
belt.
a heel hook, what would you say? Mainly it's a sprain. It's a grade 1 pop sprain.
Especially if white belts are doing it, right?
Yeah,
If an elite person is doing it, perhaps it hits all your knee and doesn't hit the ankle, and
yeah.
I mean results may vary, but
and usually it's not the higher belt that caused that problem. You know what I mean?
yeah, well, it's the white belts. It's like the number one injuries in competition. So if you're not talking about ADCC level, when people are letting stuff break on
Yeah,
purpose, most of the injuries are in novice or beginner, and they're having to do with either some weird scramble where people fell or posted wrong, or that right after that is like an Americana sort of thing. That's
yeah.
what I see mainly.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and that just shows the importance of your curriculum on building a stable gym that you're trying to build from the ground up. You need to understand all these nuances and how to teach that right. And if you just go here, do this, they do this, and I do this, and that's how you teach, then heel hooks probably don't need to be in your arsenal early on because those people aren't going to understand what the hell they're doing. you know.
Yeah, for sure. So we kind of we're bounced all over the place, but that's cool because I thought a lot of that's really good stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of other things about like the students' journey, what you do different, I know a lot of it is you're holding to the Alliance curriculum a little bit, but as far as infrastructure you have in place for like retention and how their experience, how you want their experience to be, how you're controlling it. Do you have anything unique about that, or?
I just have a recent experience right now. Retention has been a primary issue in my gym now that I started running some reports for a couple of years now. And I would say the reason why it wasn't a glaring issue, my my focus has been ads for the past couple of years, and ads has done very, very well for me up into, I would say, there was a direct correlation with September 2022. From that point forward, ads started going downhill from me. Prior to that, I was growing fast. I mean, everything was going well. So I didn't really focus on the retention and realize I was losing 15 to 20 students a month. And because I was growing 30 to 40 a month, you know? And then now when ads started getting crappier, so your sign up rate got lower, then your retention started catching up. And now I'm like, oh crap, I'm not growing anymore. I'm losing as much as I'm adding. What do I do to fix this issue? And so some of the things I had to do, one, just recently, this is a really interesting way to go about it, is where my gym is located is on the side of a major freeway. And I'm kind of in the middle of a couple different suburbs and city limits within Houston, which obviously, you know, it's one of the largest, you know, the fourth largest city or something like that. And so I have from high income areas to low income areas to medium income, you know, medium, all around me. You know, when I was doing my targeting back then, I was doing a 7-mile radius of my location, which is hitting the gauntlet of people, you know, and our sales were doing good. And of course, COVID helped for me because my primary focus was health. My background is healthcare. And so I would say I focus more on health than I do necessarily martial art for some marketing. So the COVID really helped launch a lot of that health concepts when it came to marketing. But for some reason, I feel like it's kind of dying down for whatever reason. And so now with my retention issue, I started looking at the actual location specifics of my ads. And so just recently, I excluded areas that had a low-income area because I did have students in there, but I did notice my higher cancel rates were in these particular areas. So now what I'm running a test on it now is I'm excluding those areas and I'm only targeting high-income areas on my ads because when I looked at this particular area, they're 30% of my member base right now, but they were 20% of my cancel base. So that tells me that they stay longer and they're probably going to pay more. So I just directed my whole campaign on my ads to only target them. And the rest of them, they're going to be basically hot leads. They're going to find me or they're going to use organic. I'm going to get them through, or maybe Reels and maybe some Google AdWords I'll grab them with, but I'm not going to dump a couple $1,000s trying to target them anymore.
The way Facebook is right now, though, is you can't target based on living in somewhere anymore. It has to be people that include people that traveled through it. So as long as they went through that area, you're going to get them anyway, right?
Yeah, they just changed that. Where it used to be only lived, now it's lived and visited, unfortunately. And that sucks because you get people that live 30 miles away coming to visit friends or coming down whatever, and that ad hits, it kind of stays in their feed a little bit. And they're like, oh, that's a great ad. It worked. Click on it. Sorry, man, you're too far away from me. So they just cost me money. And then it messes up my algorithm, you know, because now it's targeting someone who just doesn't live there anymore for whatever reason, you know, or never did. Yeah, so I've been really focusing on that to see if it improves my retention because I ran a geotagging report on my cancel process, and that's how I identified location issues. And so I'm just going to retarget my ads for that. And if you don't know much about what software can do for you, thankfully I've been in healthcare IT for a long time, so I can find these little nuanced softwares that kind of help me identify some data. You know me, Brian, in the consulting field, I'm a numbers guy. I'm so data specific that I probably find issues that most people don't even know exist. And I have a little bit of trouble when I talk to other gyms because we have gyms that have been around for 15 years. They don't run any ads. They're very successful. Their retention is very good. And I try to, okay, what are they different? What are they doing better? Why am I having issues that they're not having on there? And part of the reason is they've been around so long, so they're organic and their referral system is super strong. Also, they're coming back to original conversation. A lot of their instructors are homegrown, so their tribe and their community is very, very strong. Or they also found a niche, such as maybe military or veterans or something along those lines that maybe my area just doesn't have a good presence on for whatever reason. You know, not saying that mine doesn't, but these are some of the things that I'm identifying on there as far as why are they getting better results in some of the data specific areas as opposed to mine. And sometimes I wonder, should I even be focusing on that? Or should I focus on me and find out what's different about me and just hone in on that? Because sometimes we get caught up looking at other competitors, or, you know, they're competitors, but they're not, because we're all friends. And most of us are friends. But do we follow what they're doing? And I call some of these anomalies, man. They're just anomalies. If you try to do what they're doing, more likely you're not going to work. And if you're a brand new gym trying to follow methods of a gym that's been around 15 years, more than likely it's not going to work for you because we got to keep in mind, if they're 15 years long, they've probably been in the same location, or they've been in that location for a long time, meaning they're at old rent. So their overhead's much lower than yours, right? You try to go to a new facility now with the high rent everywhere, your overhead's extremely high from the very beginning. So if you try to focus on organic in the very beginning, you're going to grow at a very slow rate. So ads were the best way to catch up, to get you to 100 to 200 members within a year to 2 years. I've seen it in new gyms if they run their processes right. So you can do that. But then the problem comes in the retention. And I have found that the ads don't necessarily bring in the right people for retention. Your organic is always going to be better for retention because they're kind of seeking you out. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. So you want to make sure you focus on both organic and your ads to kind of build a successful new gym very fast and maintain it.
So for organic,
yeah.
I think we both know what organic means. The viewer may not, but also, basically organic's not paid. But there's different types of organic. So if I am posting on my social media, that's organic. But is that the same value person that searched BJJ my city on Google? Is that the same type of person as a referral? I mean, they're like, so you think all organic is like created closer to equal when compared to ads, or what?
Well, let's break down what a lot of the stuff you have to do to build organic. It's a lot of work. People don't understand. It's a lot of work to do it right. You have to have a good website. The website has to tell a good story. It has to write SEO keywords that you're coming high in your search engines. You have to have a background where they can learn about your team. They can meet some of your members. Then you're going to have organic where you have a good Facebook profile, where you have engagement posts coming on, that you have daily or every other day posts going on. You have good reels that are targeting correctly to hit the area and the demographic you're looking for. You have to have backlinks of other websites giving you credibility, which usually means in a news story, or they liked your blog and they reposted it, or you have an influencer that's part of your gym and he's posting for you. You have your organic, we can go to events in your local communities, at your local schools. On that can happen, local events. You have newspaper, which is really kind of a dying deal. And so let's say you take ad. Okay, so I start an ad and they like it. Maybe they send in information. They go into my nurturing campaign. They never schedule an appointment, but they're constantly getting emails. And many of those emails say, hey, meet our students. Hey, meet our staff. Hey, read this testimonial. That's how you bring organic into your ads. So if you don't have that stuff built, then your ads won't be as powerful, or your nurturing won't be as powerful, because you don't have the back end data to kind of make it relevant or make it important to them, right? So if you don't do that hard work in the very beginning, then you start adding all these nurturing campaigns, it's going to come off big. It's going to come off robotic. It's going to come off like you're piggybacking off someone else. And that's not what people want, right? They want to know who you are, what you're doing, what you're made of, and what are you going to do for them. More importantly, probably what you're going to do for them, right? That's what they're really looking for, So it's a big animal, man, and people don't realize it.
Yeah, I do all that stuff, and it took me forever to be doing halfway decent with all that stuff. Most of it's feels like a full-time job in of itself. Each one of those things. If you look at different industries, right? SEO, there's an SEO specialist, and then the social media manager, and then event coordinator, and then all this different things. And if you're a one-man show, you're supposed to be all of the things, and all of them really require all of your time. So it's a hard split, especially before you have staff. On a lot of that.
Change a lot of that, though.
Yeah. What?
I said AI is going to change a lot of that, especially for these gym owners that are one-man show. Here's what I recommend you guys. One, hire a mentor, and find a good one that has good experience. And then two, really start learning technology, because technology is going to prevent you, or it's going to hopefully keep it where you don't have to hire a lot of staff to do a lot of these little nuanced jobs, scheduling appointments, running the nurturing, writing blogs, SEO writing. Tools can now do that while you sleep. You just got to know the right tool to do it, put in the work, or hire someone to do it. And a lot of times, I would say, even like the consultants, we've been in a handful of consultants. I only know the one that we're kind of active in now, and they're starting to use AI a lot. And I've seen other competitors starting to use AI to increase the workload with low cost. And I would say learn. And that's kind of comes in one of the problem with some of these owners is that if you think of it we're very unique, you and I. Our backgrounds are very tech heavy. And so for us to learn this stuff, why you own Red Belt, why I have other softwares that I'm developing in the industry as well, it's because of our background. But how many gym owners do you know technology, are comfortable with technology?
Right. And what I've learned a lot with starting Red Belt is, right, so I build all these tools, and I build really some of the most, like you saw my communication module, you like that better than the industry leaders, right? And so
Absolutely.
I show it to other people, and they're like, and this is something that we're going to work on, but they're like, okay, well, that seems like a lot of work. That these other guys, they send out an email on people's birthday or whatever automatically. That's good, right? So they don't even want to like look into it. So that's one of my reasons on wanting to found Red Belt is I'm helping people at my gym, but I wanted to help these other gyms. And what I'm learning more is that I've got to have more done for you, which is like we're adding that. We're adding a done for you website service, done for you copywriting, automation. So a lot of what you were talking about, getting the tools work for you. So we're going to have two pieces, like one, here, buy the tools. And that's one of the most important things you can have, especially as a one-man show, having the tools, get it all set up. Or if you want us to do that for you, we'll do that. And it's not because I wanted to, because I didn't want to be in the done for you business, right? I didn't want to do that, but it's like that's what people really need, is they need to, because they don't want to learn this tech, because the average person will not learn the tech. And I also get it, is that like you also have to learn sales. You have to learn appointment setting. The teach, retention, the curriculum, then leads gen on all this stuff, all those organic things, the ads. Are you gonna either pay somebody to do that, or are you gonna learn that too? Because that took me years to be able to learn how to do ads halfway decent. Right? And how much money that I paid in, like, so yeah, I joined Mastermind and courses, but the most of it I paid Zuckerberg an enormous amount of money for basically nothing while I learned how to do it.
That's right.
And if you don't stay up on it, it changes, and it's a very perishable skill. So there's so much. So I'm never going to be able to done for you everything. So however much I can done for you, I'm trying to offer that. Like I'm on the same page as you, though. I think if somebody asked me that about that, yeah, you can pay somebody, I would still try and learn it. If you're not going to, paying somebody versus like letting it not, it's going to be an overwhelmingly high cost not to do it. But yeah, I think you should learn it also. And then if you're like, hey, I learned a little bit and I want to have somebody else do it, it's the same thing with sales. It's because when I was bad at sales and I tried to hire salespeople, it didn't work at my gym. When I learned sales, then I could hire and monitor salespeople, then it worked. Right? So I know a little bit. If you don't know a little bit of all the things, it can be hard for sure.
It is. In fact, I just I think it was, what is today, Friday? I think it was Tuesday. I did a whole training. I hit up my staff. So I have a bunch of different message groups in my team. I have War Room, which is just my salespeople. I have an instructor group, and then I have my staff. That's everyone on there. So if there's any business stuff that happens in the gym, all the information goes to the staff group. If it's mat information, it goes to the instructor group. If it's sales or appointments or lead issues, it goes to the War Room, right? So I hit up War Room on Tuesday. I said, hey guys, I'm going to come in and lead the way because I saw that appointments were low. We need to start making phone calls because some of the systems weren't working well, and you got to maintain those a little bit. So I went in there and I got on the phone calls and I got appointments. As soon as they answered, I showed them how to conversate, how to talk, how to flow through there. And then I go and I sell and I teach them how to flow. And I usually walk away with a piff just because you have to know how to sell. And that is incredibly important because if I don't know how to do it, how do I walk in that room and then be the best in that room? It's like I want to be that in every single role in my gym. And I tell my guys, I can do every single position better than you guys. And it's not ego. It's because I've been training for years at every single position. I've been training for years how to teach, how to train. I've been training for years how to sell. I've been training for years how to run ads. How to manage my numbers. I've had consultants since the very first month I ever opened my gym in 2015. I hired a business consultant. Why? I didn't want to make as many mistakes as other people. And so I made the investment. And granted, sometimes you make a bad investment on a consultant and you don't learn the right way.
but I guarantee you walking away with something instead of nothing, you know? And that's what everything you're going to deal with. So you got to make some type of investment. If you try to do this on your own, you're not going to grow to the speed that you could have. You're going to make a lot of financial mistakes. And if you would have just hired someone that knows how to do it better, I promise you, your skill level, your education level, and the success of that company will be at least double, if not tenfold, at the same time. You know?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Once again, this industry, I think probably most industries, but especially this industry, has a hardcore scarcity mindset problem. And 2020 did not help with that. It was already the case. And now, I mean, it might have indirectly helped in by calling out a lot of the scarcity mindset people. But because a lot of people didn't survive.
They didn't. One thing I learned through that was that before I was a kid heavy gym. I think I might have been like 60-40 adults to kids, maybe 50-50, somewhere around there. I don't recall. 2019, I think. And then when COVID hit, the ones I lost the most was the kids. And so that told me, because at that time you don't know if the government's going to screw you over again. You know what? I'm not going to be in this predicament again. I'm going to cater to the group that saved me during this lockdown. And so I would say never, I hardly ever run kids ads. It's all adult ads. And it's something that Lance as a consulting academy, they do the same thing. You market adults and those kids come from your adults. And what I have found as teaching kids is that generally the kids that have the parents trained are my best kids in the class. They're the most well behaved, they're the most technical, and they're the ones that are going to be your leaders in that group. So I do think it's pretty good, at least from my perspective, to just focus on adults and work that way into the rest of your programs. But COVID taught me that big time, really fast, where I need to put my money.
Yeah, a lot of school owners like families. That's what you're talking, like basically the parents train and the kids train, right? So they like families, except sometimes families are hard to secure. They're hard to close because why? Well, now you got to pay for multiple people. So what's your process for that?
For sign up or cancels, or both.
for all the things having to do with families.
So what I tell my guys, when you come in as a family, focus on the adult, not on the kids. Let's get the adult in there first, because we want their schedule. Their schedule is probably more important than the kids, because they have less, other than moving, job, or spouse issues. The kids probably have more BS that comes up. Oh, they're going to start soccer, they're going to start choir, school's out, summer is, oh, the big brother, or I can't get a ride because I don't get off work in time. It's like I find way more excuses with kids than I do adults. I would say way more variety excuses. Usually adults are pretty simple. Hey, I can't afford it, got schedule issues, had a baby, and the secret is, on some level, is that there's a lot of issues in the home that gets created when that person starts getting their confidence up and getting healthy, and the spouse isn't, and then the jealousy kicks in. And then I've seen that time and time again, how that'll cause issues. So that's usually why I focus on generally the man of the family first, get him in there, and then trickle him down. Now, if you can get that family cell, beautiful, but I'm not going to focus on that in that cell, because I'm going to focus on the emotions of that gentleman, confidence, being a leader in their family, feeling like a man, and then leading the way for their children. Is usually where I'll put my focus on. Now, as far as retention, when it comes to that, it's the same. I'm going to come back to the man of the household, and then this is also important when you're running your sales. And I train my guys this. The pain point, we're talking about sales, you guys have been through consulting or sales process. Pain point is the only thing you focus on, and the only thing you talk about. Okay? Pain point is, why are they in front of you? And I think Mike Stewart had a really good thing years ago. He said, one, you're a doctor, and pretend you're a doctor. Two, ask why at least 3 times, because the very first answer they're going to give you is going to be probably BS. It's going to be ego-based. You got to dive a little deeper in that cell. So it's like, yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? And until you find that real pain point of why they're in. Once you find that pain point, the cell's easy. Typically, unless they don't have a job or don't have money, right? But if you find that pain point, that cell's easy. Now, if you know that, you notate that in your notes for your account on that cell, whether you convert them or not. And if they come in to cancel, you bring up their notes, go, well, you know, when you signed up, you said this and this. Did that happen? Did you get those attributes? Did you get those? I did. So you're wanting to potentially lose them now? Like, what's going on? You bring those emotion, that pain point back in that conversation, and a lot of times you can save them. And then always have a step-down program, because if it is financial, have a secret step-down program that you can use to keep them in your environment, so you can, you know, keep them maintaining or regaining those results that you guys, you know, you lined up with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hopefully you did the same. Or maybe a better way, I don't know.
What percentage of cancels do you save that way?
Well, so I don't have the number directly on there. I would say we haven't been very successful as a unit to require all cancels to go through a cancel meeting. So that's something that we really emphasize in the past couple of months, that you can't just cancel over the phone anymore. You have to come in person. And if you say you moved, you got to show us an address change. I need to, because we do contracts. One thing I do differently, and I wouldn't say it's the best approach, this is the approach I just haven't changed. I do require a contract in the first year, but at the second year I don't. And the way I tell them, like, I just want 1 year commitment out of you. If I get 1 year commitment out of you, then I can give you skills for the rest of your life. I can introduce you to people that will benefit you the rest of your life. And it's your decision to stay with us without any incentive financially to do so. And if you want to cancel after a year, you know, you're done. There's no cancellation fee. But if we have a conversation and we align our goals together, you give me that commitment, we high five each other, and all of a sudden, 3 months, you're going to walk out of that agreement, you're going to pay a penalty. And that's the kind of way I see it. Now, it is a better business model to have renewals every time. And if you really want to make a lot of money, I haven't really tested this, but I know many gyms that do this. They require you to redo the down payment every renewal to do that as well, and that increases obviously the revenue. Those gyms are very successful. I just haven't implemented it. I don't know. I guess I'm a little scared to do that, thinking that maybe we won't get as many renewals, but I don't know the answer, but I know some gyms are very successful with that.
Yeah, you definitely can do that, and basically down payments can be seen as a part of the, like, if you're selling a year program, it can be seen as it's just part of the cost. Many gyms, including mine, give you a choice in down payments, and if you pay more, your weekly or monthly is less, right? So if that's the case, so for instance, your cost, theoretically, I could do something custom for you if you're like, well, I need my cost to be under $100 a month. I need it to be under $50 a month. Like, as long as we do something with the down payment, we can be under $10 a month. At that point, why not go ahead and pay the whole thing and be $0 a month? So if you're doing that model, you almost have to do a renewal with a down payment, because I can't let you pay $10 a month forever. Right, I can't. Right, because the down payment was considered in the price of the.
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely makes sense. That's money math, right? Yeah, I agree, man. Man, there's so much to this industry. I laugh when people go, "Oh, no, my gym," and I just look at them and go, "No idea what you're in for, man."
Right. Well,
if you care,
they do it. They do it. So many people do it with. They even say it this way, like, oh yeah, I want to teach for a living, I'm going to open up my own gym. Well, teaching's going to be the very small little piece of it. You have to know all this other stuff. So if you want to teach for a living, go work for somebody. Yes. And I do understand that it's sometimes hard to get a profitable job working for somebody else in teaching, but it's becoming more possible. So it's possible to I know both you and I have you can make a decent living working full time for us. But most gyms, they're like, oh yeah, well, it's $20 per class. I'll give you 3 classes per week. So with that $60, I'll also comp your membership, so you can go out to eat like twice a week on us, and then you work your day job in the middle. So right, the reason so many people do it, they don't want to open a business. They just wanted to teach for a living, and that's the only way they saw as able to do it, because they see people able. If I'm a gym owner, I'll be able to. But I interact with so many gym owners that have still never quit their job, and some of them, they have to work extra hours of their job to pay for their gym that loses money every month.
Yep.
So that's not the vision either. And if the only thing you're focusing on is you just go in and teach class, and once again, they probably don't think about the retention. They just teach however they think they should be teaching. If you just teach class, you don't do any marketing, tech, sales, appointment setting, any of the things, which are literally full-time jobs.
Yes.
Of
its own.
Yeah. Without teaching, they're full-time jobs, right? So if you don't do any of those things, okay, are you hiring somebody to do those things? Probably not, because you're not profitable enough and don't know enough to hire someone and train them for that. So they're just not getting done. And that's why most people suffer. So we talked about the outliers. I will say one reason it was harder for me to learn is people I went through, like my coach, Eddie Bravo, is very, very successful.
Yeah.
However, you cannot model Eddie Bravo.
He's a anomaly.
Yeah, there's just one Eddie Bravo. Yep. Unless I also am going to be on the Joe Rogan podcast every day, beat Hoyler Gracie. And that's really, he does good accidentally with personal branding. He's Eddie, and he does a good job at that. And he doesn't even do many of these other things. He doesn't have to, but you do probably. If you're not the 1% whatever outlier, or maybe less than 1%, then so you look at these people. That's why you don't look at one's gym, or you get these coaches with success of multiple students, and you look at them, because if there's people that don't do any of the things right that you can see, and they're like, hey, they're doing at least pretty well, and some of them are doing really, really well.
Yeah. Well, what about, let's talk about competition, right? So not competing in jiu-jitsu, competing in business. So Houston, when I opened up my gym in 2015, there was, I think I counted, it was like between 30 and 40 gyms. Maybe
there's well over 100 right now.
Over 150 easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you got small ones that aren't really showing up. And because at the time, Dallas had a little bit more to us, because I run the Texas BJJ calendar, and I had a whole geotagging that would auto pull up the gyms, and I would go find my own list. And that's how I came up with the numbers on there. You know, now we're probably 150 in the Houston area. Houston's obviously massive. So let's say you're a brand new gym owner, and you're going to open up a gym in Houston. You are not, even though we're 4 or 5 million people deep, however it is, you're not going to grow at the rate that those old gyms grew. Now, if you go to a small city,
well, unless you could, because we just
if you have the capital and you know the business processes and you have the right people in place.
Right, if you have the capital and have the business processes, and we just talked about a gym the other day when you and I met that didn't really know the business processes, but poof, they were in an association, they were in and they just, and by the way, I say in an association, if you're listening, usually joining an association does not bring you any students. It's something you do out of loyalty, maybe it helps you with curriculum or something like that. But if you think, I'll just become a blah, 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 and the mats will fill, that almost never is the case. Yeah. But sometimes people just open, and they're just successful for whatever reason. Their connections, you and I were talking about trying to figure it out, and we couldn't. We didn't have enough information. Maybe they taught previously at the surrounding gyms and people came over. Maybe, who knows? But for every one of them, there's somebody, they just competed and did the things. We also discussed people that had competed and did more of the things. Were even higher in credentials, and they weren't profitable. They open, there's these world champions that open gyms all the time. They can't make money.
No, most people don't realize that the most common numbers, majority of gyms out there are no more than 125 users and no more than $16,000 in revenue a month. And it's usually that or below. And then usually, the small amount's going to be above that, and the 1% is probably 40, 50,000 plus a month. We're not even talking about profit margins yet, but that's just the general number. So what I've seen is the gyms that don't understand marketing, don't understand processes, they generally don't get over 125 or 150 in their students. And the reason why I'm pretty sure that happens, I tested this out, and of course, I'm pretty friendly with a lot of gym owners, and being a consultant, you get to hear a lot of stories and a lot of numbers. If you don't run marketing and it's straight organic and you're a brand new gym, I'm going to say on average you're going to bring in about 8 people. Just with that alone, you're signing up. Okay. Now, if your retention, you want to be generally below 5% in your retention numbers. And that's easy to say at 100 members means you're losing at most 5 people. 5 people for 100 members. And so you're naturally going to grow organically if you're signing up 8 and your retention is at 5% of 100 members, right? So you're going to go at 3 people per month if that stays consistent. Now, you're at 200. You have 200 members and you're at 5%. You're now losing 10, but you're not running ads. You're still at 8. So now you're stagnant, growing, or losing. Now, you're probably not growing.
You're
probably
losing.
Neutral.
With
or
those
you're
numbers,
losing.
with those numbers, you're losing.
Yeah, you would, but there's going to be like anomaly in months, right? Sometimes you're a
Right.
little low, sometimes you're a little high. But yeah, if you stay that system, you're losing. At some point, you're going to go back to that 125, and you are stuck, right? Because one, you don't understand retention. You can't lower that, or your retention starts growing because, and what you're going to find is as your numbers grow, 300, 400, 500, you might be higher than 5%. You may be 6, 7% at that point. And then, and it's not just that, because it could be more than just retention. Your revolutions could cost you 10%.
That goes into retention. Like, so that's why when I was saying that students per month, you need to know the average. So not like the up, the down, the average amount that you're losing, because that's the magic number, right? So I knew what you were going to say on why these schools cap out is because you determine the cap of your school based on retention. So basically, how much percent of your student base are you losing? So if you look at these massive schools, these rare outliers that have 1,000 students, so 10% churn at 1,000 is 100 people. And it's easy to have 10% churn if you have a massive gym like that, if you're not careful. So say they get it back to 5%, which is the best they're going to ever do with that number. Then that's 50 people. That's 50 people a month they've got to get in. So if you don't have the systems to sign up 50 people a month, many people, they wouldn't even know how to do it. Because if they're like, oh, people just come in the class and I meet with them. Well, at that scale of 50, like you probably, they won't be spread out on all your times. They'll be mainly at night, right? So if you don't have the systems in place to be able to do it, you won't sign up enough people to be able to grow. And that's another issue is like, you and I are numbers guys. The average jiu-jitsu owner, I was presenting along with a couple people at an event. It was kind of just a school owners event, not a super professional event. Another person was talking, and I talked about why I did a certain thing. It's like, well, because the numbers dictated it. And I just said, like, because I have the numbers, that's why. And I said, I think the secret is don't make an emotional decision. Make enough. And then they came back like, well, so much of sales and buying is emotional and this and this. And they basically wanted to disparage it. What they're saying is right, but the emotions are part of my numbers, right? All that's part of my numbers. And they don't want to, the average person doesn't want to believe that this is real. Because it's the opposite of them, and they just feel like if I go and I be authentic. And for these listeners that aren't maybe not business owners, maybe I should have said this earlier. One reason I am passionate about this is necessary to get the students results. So I have to think this way so my student doesn't have to. Because if you don't learn all this stuff, you can't provide a good service. And one of the reasons I always ask about retention, you gave with the different marketing in certain areas. One of the reasons I'm passionate about retention is that's basically I'm doing a better job and providing a better service. Not only is it more profitable, right? But if retention is longer, I see it as I'm providing a better experience and better service. Correct. So if anybody thinks all this is unethical, get over that step one, because it's in my opinion, it's unethical to not learn this. Because what does it really happen when you're not learning this? You deliver a really terrible experience. Go to the opposite of a really professional gym and have them not answer your phone calls, do all the things that are the opposite to sales, retention. They come in and you're not part of the competition team. When I was a beginner, they had it was like MMA. They had okay, fighters over here, everybody else do 1-2s down the mat. They just would ignore me all class long because I wasn't going to go fight for them. I ended up being the only successful competitor out of that gym. Well, not while I was out of that gym, but later. None of those people ended up anywhere. I was the only person that competed successfully, but they didn't see me as that, right? So people, that's what you get by not being this. you get those gyms that they don't care about the numbers. Like, okay, but the numbers represent the quality of what we're doing here.
Yeah. It's funny because the great Fabio Grisel, benefits of being under alliance, said something years ago, which was very surprising given of his academies. He's known as one of the best mats in Brazil. It's like the Mecca, right? He said, we got to be careful that you don't create favoritism for your competitors. You don't treat them any different. You can support them, but that white belt that coming in almost has more importance than that black belt that's going and winning world champions. And I 100% agree with them. Because a couple things I've seen with that is, just like you said, you felt isolated, and so did everyone else in your group, and you're the one that lasted. That's just a testament to who you are, right? Because you can battle that. But how many of those could have been saved if that wasn't part of the culture? I've heard that from other competing gyms here, that people have left because there's huge favoritism on the competitors on a very large gym. And so you're losing students when that happens. And I also noticed, because I've even been guilty of this myself, I'll have my good competitors in my class, and then they're drilling. Sometimes I'll go by and I'll add extra details to them because I know they can handle it. But to some students, it seems like I'm creating favoritism. But as an instructor, I'm just saying, okay, I can add some black belt level information to them that I'm not teaching, and I can go around. But I got to be very careful on other people's perspectives, because that's their reality in your gym, and that can have a huge part to play on your culture of your gym with that favoritism concept. You know what I mean? So
I think that's super important. If we're really here to serve the students, if we're really here talking about the benefits of jiu-jitsu to people's life, like, how come you didn't talk about the IBJJF world title when they signed up? Because nobody wanted or cared about that. So, and later on, that only your IBJJF competitors or whoever, MMA, if that's your guys' thing, whatever, only those guys are important. Like, that's super toxic, and I hate that. That said, like what you're saying, I do think that treating everybody quote unquote equally isn't so important, because like different people do need custom treatment. But you have to make sure that it doesn't feel like favoritism. So obviously my upper ranks shouldn't be treated. I shouldn't speak with them and give them the same details and the same thing as a brand new person. So like, I also shouldn't be ignoring those guys. So if I could easily do it that way too. That's one reason separation of classes are important, because if I'm spending all the time on these beginners, then okay, well, my purple belt's doing that move pretty right, just keep going, right? So
it's so much going on. It's like, I feel like we could have multiple podcasts on each subject and just do a complete deep dive, especially since we're numbers guys. It's probably not a bad idea, Brian, to do that. Just have each subject and have it just break down the data on what we see across the board on all this stuff, such as retention, such as cells, even roles within the gym. What should they be doing? What should you be paying them?
I mean, I'm down. Some people may love it. The rest of it can use it to fall asleep at night. So, because some of these gym owners are gonna be like, oh, but just put it. If you're anxious during the day, just listen to me and Danny talk about numbers, and you can fall asleep easier.
Well,
but
it's funny because I think I had like an hour, 2 hour call with Lance and Nate, because we were going over my retention problem. And of course, my software is, it's everything you can think of from my gym. And they're like, Danny, man, like, I don't even track half this data. I just focus on cells, But to me, there's little nuances that I'm seeing in that data. But I did find it pretty interesting that successful gyms, and I've talked to quite a few of them, and I showed them my software I'm building. They go, I don't track any of that. I don't know if I'd ever put time into that. And I asked myself, how much more successful would you be if you did? You're successful right now, but how much more would you be if you knew your data, if you knew exactly what was going on?
And that's another interesting point to some of the data is that, and I've tried to figure out this too, because I've tracked different things, is like, okay, exactly how valuable is each piece of data? Because some data is a lot more valuable than others. And some data almost might not be worth tracking, depending on its difficulty to attain and things like that, because there's an old engineering saying that you've probably heard is, what you track is what you improve, right? So if I track some weird really low priority things, some of my staff's focus might go to it. So, I've thought about that a lot on like some of these little things. Is it possible to, like many people accuse us of, to be too numbersy and track a little bit? Now, if it's just the stats are there and our software's grabbing it, then that's cool. But like if we're carefully measuring all the time, because even in corporate, right, they don't do a time study all the time, right?
Right.
So,
Well, I look at it this way, Brian. It's something I talk to gym owners. I go, have you ever thought of what your exit strategy is?
they haven't, is the answer to your question.
That's a super important question to know as a business owner, because especially in our field, this business, for the most part, if we're going to be faced, requires our body to work correctly. And then when we start getting 60, 70, 80 years old, look at Joe Guy, he retired. He's like, passed it on, sold his gym, right? Fabio did the same thing, sold it to Michael Lange, passed it. Even though he teaches sometimes, he's kind of passed the buck, right? So these gym owners, what is your exit strategy when you're older? Because your passion is going to change at that point. It could be an entrepreneurship. It could just be living on a fucking farm. I don't know. But if you don't have an exit strategy, you don't have a really good business plan. Because your business plan, just like in life, when you go through any life course, the 4 pillars, your relationships, your spiritual, your wealth, your finances, like you have to have every one of your resources that lines up with that vision of what you want right, in your life. And your business has to be the same. If you don't have an exit strategy or what you want long-term in that gym, then everything you're aligning in is in chaos. You're just, I don't know, just trying to make money instead of build a system that's sellable or passable.
Right. So I've always thought for a long time that I definitely want my gym to be able to outlive me and to be able to like be a thing that continues to provide. And to do that, I can't be a one-man show, right? I have to set things up. So I don't have any plans to sell my gym, but that doesn't mean I don't have any plans to be able to walk away from it. And in fact, I think pretty earlier on than I was able to, it should be a priority to be able to at least temporarily step away, because once again, right now you had like a surgery or something like that. You had a situation where you had to walk away. So some people, they start their gym or their business because, I don't want to be told what to do. I want to have freedom. Okay, but here's the problem is if you have a regular job and you get married, because I talked to somebody recently that had and they got married, then you could get a week off, right? Especially if you've been working there for five years, whatever, because this person's been out. Yeah. Well, no, you can get a week off probably. If not, you can quit and get a new job. Like that's the backup, right?
Yeah, right,
It's hard to build up a whole new business. That's basically not feasible. But you could get a new job. But also, mainly, you get off time. You could go you've never taken time off in 5 years. You could go take a honeymoon. If you don't build this the right way, heaven forbid if you ever get sick or if you ever want to do it, because you can never leave. It's way less freedom than a regular job. You can never leave if it's just you. And if you do, maybe your students will understand. Well, they'll leave. Like they're counting on you. So you're letting them down by not building it as a business, because you cannot sustain it by yourself to a quality that matters. Right. So I volunteered for, I forget how many years, like 7 for free, like at Lamar. I taught a club. Like I like teaching. I taught for free for a long time. But there is a different quality you get now versus when when you had to walk 2 flights of stairs to go to the bathroom at Lamar, and we have to close it this summers. And if something happens to me, I have a backup. If something happens to that backup, there's a backup for that backup.
Yep.
So
I have spreadsheets of backup of every role. If this person's out, call that person, and that person, and that person, and I have SOPs for everything. I have videos. Like I have a system that tries to protect everything I can think that goes wrong. I try to have something in place.
And what that is also customer service for the end user, because, and that's one reason. Some people think they should be able to charge more if they're a world champion and it's all of them. But in reality, even if I'm not a world champion, give the more valuable service by not being a one-man show, because that world champion isn't immortal. He can get sick, something will go wrong, service will be bad. Now that just whoever will cover class. That's what used to happen back in the day. Oh, somebody, there's a key under the mat, and like you just open it, and I guess we roll around, right? That was the old way. And
Well, how many world champions do you know that have a successful gym?
not a lot actually.
Exactly. No, that's the point, right? Hardly any.
It's definitely possible to do both, but like you would have to go on that journey again and not think that that's going to float you for that. And also, so many I early on wanted, my passion was for teaching, and the reason I competed so much was because I thought I needed that on my resume. Like I wanted to do that for my school, right? But so many of these, like if their focus was their self and competing, they don't. They just couldn't make a living competing in jiu-jitsu. They don't even want to teach. They're not passionate about that, and that's another reason some of these places you think you want to go to train, maybe you don't want to go there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely right. I have too many thoughts running through my head and all that, brother. I don't know which one to start with.
Yeah, so we've been on for almost an hour and a half for this first one, and I will be down to talk to you again on the second one. But I think what we do is, like, if you have closing thoughts or a closing story or anything like that, and then we could kind of wrap up for this one.
Yeah, well, I'm going to assume that your listeners are going to be the business owners and not grapplers, and probably not. We don't know. Who knows what happens? But I'm going to talk to the business owners, I guess. My recommendation from my pain that's come with all that is put more time into your business than on the mats, 100%. And think about what it took for you to be good on the mats. Use a lot of that same concept in running your business. So it required someone better than you on the mats to make you better. It required you to have a partner or two to finesse your technique, right? And so what that equates to is, if you're in business, have a business mentor. If you have staff, treat them like partners on the mats. You should have the same goals, right? There's a very good book that I read called Traction, that I use it with my staff often, that helps align the business goals with one another. And basically what it does is that you line up your 1, your 3, and your 10-year goals. You have your 90-day rocks on there. You have your business motto, your purpose. And what it recommends is, don't create it on your own. And I'm sorry, someone's calling me. Don't create it on your own. You're supposed to sit down with your whole team, and everyone has input to every single answer on that. And if you do that, then when they make decisions when you're not there, they're in line with your business concept. They're in line with your business purpose. So whatever it took to get you that position to either open up the academy or run that academy, use a lot of those same lessons in business, and have a team surround. Don't do it all on your own. And as we stated earlier, learn software. Learn someone at Red Belt. What he's building on his automation, I haven't seen a CRM that does that. It reminds me a little bit about Go High Level, but I would say it's probably better than Go High Level in automation when it would be done on there. So having the right tools to save you time, that will give you, here's something that's very important to me, consistency. It's super important to me. And here's the way I look at this. And this is why I'm a numbers guy. Numbers create consistency. Chasing clout, chasing other people create inconsistency. So let's say that I have an AI bot that runs my ads, and I know that bot consistently gives me this result. Then I know I can apply certain numbers to those ads based on that consistent result, right? If I have ASEO tools, it's writing blogs, and I know consistently it gets me 100 views a day on my website, which gives me a 10% conversion. Maybe I get 10 leads a month on there, all through my SEO and my bots. Then I can build a plan for that. I can build a business on that consistency. But every month is up, down, up, down. Think of the stress and the anxiety that comes with the inconsistency of those processes, right? So whatever you do, track your data, find what is consistent. That way you can build a plan of action for that and know where you're going and know what your end game is, such as the exit strategy or a partnership on that. And man, there's so much you can go into just from how to find retail space, problems that I found on that, inside your contracts, what'll bite you in your ass, because most of us did not go to business school. This is our very first business that we started. And we hire maybe a lawyer, or maybe we don't. Maybe we use Rocket Lawyer to generate all this crap and read it. Now we can use AI to kind of go through those documents. Do your due diligence. Use whatever tools in your arsenal to protect you 5 years down the road. I'm going through something right now with my landlord, that mistake I made that's biting me in the ass due to the contract of my landlord. And it's not just me. It happens all day long, and not in just martial arts, but across the board in business, you know? So hire the right people, do your diligence, learn business as a number one priority, and try to be as consistent as possible throughout everything that you can do. And I don't know. There are some people that, I'm just going to hire CPA and do my taxes. Here's the thing. I've read tax books. And the one thing that the best tax books tell you, don't even trust your accountant. Okay? Know how all that stuff, because the more educated you are, the better decisions you can make before you ever talk to your accountant. Okay? Because that accountant is dealing with maybe 100 or 1,000 other clients. They're not going to do a deep dive into your crap. And let's say they're reconciling your accounting. There's going to be charges on there. They have no idea what that is, and they're just going to throw it in a category. And you're just depending on them to understand what all that means. And they're going to be wrong. So I always have to go behind my accountant or in front of it and start moving things into categories that I know what that meant for me, right? To save me on taxes. So that's why it's so important for me to learn every single role of this business. And unfortunately, it takes me up the mat, guys. It just is what it is. But I got into the business to be a fucking business owner, right? And that's where my job is. That's where my time is. That's what I put. That's what I invest my money, my life. And I've lost marriages. I've lost a lot of stuff trying to be good and learn what that stuff is, right? It's a battle. It is a long, long battle. It's exactly what you said. You don't get your 2-week vacations if you don't do it right. You don't get vacations at all. There's a couple gym owners that haven't been on vacation 7 years. That's in the consulting group, right? Why? Because they never got the system down right. Never understood consistency. They didn't understand any of it. And those people have been losing out on life because of that lack of consistency, that lack of mentorship. Because they let their ego, let their emotions drive them. The sooner you get away from that and you start driving everything based on data, the easier your life is, right? And if you're a blue belt looking to open up a school, good luck. I won't support you, and I know other people will. I just have a moral compass problem with that. But if you do, hire people to do it right, because you can be very, very successful if you do on that. And just get the right people around you. Get the right people around you. It freaking matters. It's why me and Brian talk very well. We understand each other. He's been very successful in his gym. I've been successful. I've been not successful. Again, it's a way that you go through, and we just understand so much because we've been in consulting groups. We build softwares. We know the numbers. We know the tech. We see the problems. We talk to gym owners. And so having people like Brian and I in your corner, or softwares like we're developing, it can be the difference maker between a good life or a bad life, or just a life that you're just getting by. And I'd much rather be on the top end of that conversation, So it's a long message. It's an important message, but learn from it what you will, man.
Yeah. And also, the only way to help your staff and your students have those better things is to build them yourself, right? So I can only, back in the day, I've got people that have pursued careers that maybe, not saying anything bad about the military. It's good for some people. I have some staff that maybe shouldn't have joined, but that I couldn't hire them, right? Because I wasn't there yet. And now I am. But so you also let the people, if selfishness won't drive, just let you know that your students will be better when you learn this, and so will your staff. So yeah, I agree with that message 100%, because even if you're willing to not go on vacation, because I'm able to, but I haven't taken a vacation in forever. I just go on business trips or whatever. I just don't really do that
That's
sort
our
of thing.
vacation, and I've been with them on you several times.
Yeah, but they're all business events, right? But yeah, that's the only thing I travel for. It's all business related. A pure vacation, I don't really even know what that is. I think I took one as a small child.
I take them often.
But regardless, even if you don't care about that sort of thing, you still need to do it, because you're going to let other people down if you don't.
Yeah.
We are the leaders of this generation. And it's the blue belt's fault if he opens, but it's also our fault if we're doing such a job that a blue belt can come in and or feels like he should come in because, he doesn't have mentorship. Like, what's going on with that? Sometimes they just want to do it, but I know in my area, like, one of the reasons I wanted to open is because everybody else kind of sucked, right? So. There's still places like that. It's becoming less common. So as we suck less, it's going to help all of that. So I think that's a great message on for business owners, for gym owners. Remind yourself that this is also a skill. It's a perishable skill too. You still have to keep working on this all the time. And it's the key cornerstone of this business. So I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks so much. Danny, I will throw in, he acted like he's not that successful. Danny has a very, very super 1% successful gym. Like everybody that's successful, he also wants to be more successful. He's trying to get better, but he's got a very, very successful, very systemized gym. And another one of the key metrics is not only is he a 1% successful gym in terms of students, revenue, and all the things, but he can maintain that when life has taken him off the mats. He didn't want to have these circumstances. Life happened, and he's okay. And most people can't, if they are successful, they can't maintain it at that point. And bad stuff happens occasionally. So if you aren't ready, then what will you do? You'll spend your life building it, and then it's gone.
Right. I can teach or train anytime that I want. It's almost like I'm a student again. So
yeah,
I'm in the position that everyone wants to be able to open up a gym. You know what I mean?
That everybody thinks that it's going to be the way, but it's not. That's not it.
Yep. And funny thing, I opened up my gym because the gym I was at fell. It closed.
To my point, what I was saying, like, you opened up as a non-black belt because in that case, you felt like you had to, right? Because they sucked at business, you opened up maybe earlier than you should have. So I'm not saying some of these guys, it's not their fault, but yes. So you and I both opened up because, we felt, in our opinions, that the places we were not doing what they needed to do.
Yeah.
So as a leader, I never wanted, that's one reason why I wanted to do all the things, competing and whatever. Like, I don't want my students to feel like they have to move to go train with Danaher to get good training. I don't want them to feel like that I have to make sure it's good here. So they don't feel like that they're disenfranchised, that they're like, man, I got to go do it better because it's in ruins here.
Yeah. Man, I really would like for us to do this and have certain topics, and we'll just focus on one and let all our experience and our knowledge kind of dive in. Because right now we did a very broad conversation and everything, but that's just scratching the surface of what me and you know. You know?
Yeah, we'll do it again later for sure. If you're up for it, let's wrap up for today. I think the broad one was a good first podcast, though. Good introduction to what this world is for those of you that may not be super familiar with it.
Right.
So any closing words, thoughts, any additional ones?
Good luck, have patience, man. And if you have any questions, contact Brian and I. And we'll be more than welcome to help out. For a small fee.
Awesome, guys. We'll see you next week.